Hi guys, welcome back, and if you're new here, this is AmeriCorps for you. I'm Abby, and today we're going to talk a little bit about Black history, mostly inventors and educators. So today we're going to talk about educators first, and when we're talking about educators, we're talking anything from principals, teachers, and creators of institutions. So the first one I want to talk about is Booker T. Washington. Booker T. Washington was the principal of the Tuskegee Institute in Tuskegee, Alabama. It's a historically Black college and usually has more Black educators and Black students than any other race. In Booker's early years, he really took in the impact of education and wanted to get a degree. So he spent a lot of his time working in institutes to pay for his tuition in order to go to these schools. And when he finally got the opportunity to develop his own institution, he found that part of his educational career was really important, which led to his founding requirements for his institution. In the early years of the Tuskegee Institution, Booker T. Washington made sure that he had his students build their own classrooms, dormitories, and all the other things that they would need to have an education. This was founded on his experience in education, where he found that he appreciated his education more when he had a hands-on involvement in the creation of it. The institution, along with the building of classrooms and dormitories, the students also had their own large farm, which had animals and produce and made the institution almost completely self-supported. Booker spent a lot of his time expanding on his institution, going to multiple speakings and talking about it, and finally his death came in November 14, 1950. After his death, many people expanded on his institution and allowed it to grow, and it's still part of the Black community to this day. If you want to learn more about Booker T. Washington, he actually has a book called Up From Slavery where he talks about his whole life in detail and even the creation of his institution. The next educator I want to talk about is Marva Collins. She was an elementary school teacher in Chicago, and she spent a lot of her teaching career testing out different types of educational implements to try and better her students' education, whereas most teachers at the time would spend their career using one teaching technique. When Marva wanted to expand on that and develop her own teaching technique to help underprivileged students really prosper in their educational careers. Marva started an elementary school in her own home and made it a requirement for herself to approach her learning lessons to turn what were considered unteachable students into very successful ones. Marva's goal was to make sure that her students and all students alike had the opportunity to get the same education as someone who was on a higher level or someone who was considered elite at the time. Her students were considered unteachable because they might have had some type of disability, or they were actually just Black students who were ostracized from their school at the time. Along with her many accomplishments like awards and teaching thousands of teachers her techniques, she was also recognized by the president at the time, Ronald Reagan. She was also offered the opportunity to be the Secretary of Education, but she actually turned the position down to continue her teaching career. Her career came to an end when her death came in June 24th, 2015. Marva has created a teaching technique and institution that will last for years and still is recognized to this day for her amazing accomplishments. The last educator I want to touch on is William Leo Hansberry. He's considered the father of African studies and African education. In the 1920s, Hansberry taught his first courses at the Howard University. He taught African studies to many students, and in the 1950s, he did his field research in Africa and created the new Constitution for African Studies in higher education. On November 3rd, 1965, Hansberry sadly died, but that didn't stop his influence. His creation and foundation of African studies is still seen today in higher education and created a conversation to further interest in African studies around the world. The next part of our video is going to be about inventors. Black inventors, from little things like water guns all the way to the most important invention that you might not know was actually created by a Black person, but the light bulb. So the first inventor is Lewis Howard Vladimir. He was born September 4th, 1848, and was known for many inventions like a toilet in the railroads and many other inventions that were railroad involved before he became an assistant to Thomas Edison. You might recognize the name Thomas Edison for the creation of the light bulb. But did you know that actually Thomas Edison hired Vladimir to come in and help him create a long-lasting light bulb that we use to this day? Vladimir came in and helped Thomas Edison create a metal flint instead of a paper one inside of the glass bulb that could be plugged into any type of port, and those are the kinds of light bulbs that we use to this day instead of a paper flint one that was created firsthand by Thomas Edison. Vladimir eventually created the patent process, and that also helped him patent the light bulb that we use today. And then unfortunately in 1928, Vladimir came to his death at a very good age of 80 years old. The next inventor I want to talk about is George Washington Carver. Now, he was an agricultural scientist, so he promoted the different types of crops that were considered poor people crops, but were actually easier to grow and produce a better soil environment. And one of the crops that he advocated really hard for was peanuts. He loved peanuts. He even produced a cookbook for peanuts, in which was the production of my favorite snack, peanut butter. That's right, he created peanut butter. And another cool fact about Carver is that he actually went to the Tuskegee Institution, which you might remember from the beginning of the video was Booker T. Washington's school. Going on about Carver's life, his birth records and death records are very hard to find and actually aren't really that accessible or probably weren't even recorded. But the only dates we could find is that he was born sometime in the 1860s. The last inventor I want to tell you guys about is Lonnie Johnson. He's a pretty cool inventor, and he was born October 6th, 1949. Lonnie Johnson actually started his invention career pretty early when he represented his high school in 1968 at a science fair where he created his own robot, which he called Linux. So this robot was an air compressed powered robot and actually won Lonnie the first prize at his high school science fair. After high school, Lonnie Johnson furthered his education career and became a scientific engineer. He was later offered a job at NASA in 1979, and that's where he began his inventions in space and life. And one of Lonnie Johnson's most prominent inventions is something that you guys might use all the time. He created the Super Soaker water gun, which is pretty cool in my opinion. Lonnie Johnson is actually still in retirement from NASA to this day, and his inventions like the water gun is still played with by kids all around the world. Thank you guys for joining me and taking a little bit of time to learn about some Black inventors and educators. I encourage you to take your own time and research some inventors, educators, and Black historians that have just made American society what it is today. Make sure you guys like and subscribe so that you can be informed every Monday for new history videos of this month. The next Black History Month video is going to be about artists and literature, and it's going to be featuring a new member named Guadalupe. Okay guys, make sure you wash your hands, wear your masks, and stay safe. Bye!